All right, we are live. A few minutes late. I have a new setup here, and I can explain why that is in just a second. But today it is held together with duct tape and string. So if you're hearing me, everything's working. Good afternoon, Graham. Good evening from the UK. Good afternoon, William. It's good to be back with the live stream. I know it was a little bit of time where I didn't have, or last week I didn't have a live stream. Yeah, I needed to move this setup because there's a handful of products that I want to test in my office that I can't show on camera until a particular date, understandably. And so it's just like the last live stream angle I had over there, like it was very wide, and I loved how like it felt like you were here with me, but it was just not something that would work long term. Because I'm obviously going to have products I want to have in this room to test and try out so I can make videos for you guys, but I can't always talk about them right away. And one such product that I thought I wouldn't be able to talk about until a week or two from now kind of surprised me. SwitchBot told me this was coming out in late August, but is the new SwitchBot, what's the model number? Their new vacuum that supports Matter. And one of the things I love about SwitchBot vacuums is that they are, this is the K10 Plus Pro. And one of the things I love about SwitchBot vacuums is how small they are. I mean, I can try out my new desk scene here, and it is just so small. Like, that thing is so tiny. I mean, look at that compared to like my keyboard and my iPad. And so it's nice that it can get into smaller spaces, and the new K10 Pro Plus is supposed to navigate corners better, but I literally just took it out of the box this afternoon because SwitchBot sent it to me like a couple weeks ago. I had sort of planned on it being like a 20, like next week or the week after video. And I've had this week has been crazy for my life, especially outside of YouTube, professional life and personal life. So everything's fine, but I mean, just like no time to just set up a vacuum that I will be making a video on a little while from now. So will have thoughts coming on this vacuum. It does support Matter, so definitely going to be keeping an eye on that. And I think that the Matter support requires the SwitchBot hub. So if you have the SwitchBot hub, then it will link to Matter. And I just love the concept SwitchBot has of a smaller vacuum. And they've done some other innovative stuff. They were the first to directly connect to your water supply for a mop. Roborock has since done that as well. And so, yeah, I'm definitely excited to check that out. Took me by surprise that it was announced on Wednesday. But just a heads up that that's out there, and I'll definitely be sharing my thoughts on it in the coming weeks. So that is the SwitchBot vacuum. I have a handful of other topics to talk about here. Let's see. The other big one that I wanted to bring up is just that the Nest thermostat looks really cool, and the fourth generation one that supports learning. I'm really excited about it. We'll see if I'm able to get one for the channel and talk about it. But I'm definitely I think it's a cool new entrant in the smart thermostat range. For a while, you've been able to integrate Nest thermostats with Apple Home via the Starling Home Hub, and I imagine that'll continue with this Nest. But it's nice to have official Matter support, which then means you can officially add it to things like Apple Home. And it, of course, not everybody loves Google services and everything like that, especially people who gravitate towards Apple. But I use a lot of Google stuff. I mean, you're on YouTube as well. And so I think it's, all great. And I love the concept of the design of the nest being a round circle, and just it looks beautiful. So definitely interested in checking that out as well. But yeah, I got some more people in the chat. Good evening, Zane. Nice to see you here. And Wisp as well. Nice to see you guys here. Larry. Hello, Larry. And James from Las Vegas. I just recently booked some travel. Plan on covering CES for you guys this year in January. So be coming out that direction. So other news that's been going on, well, I guess first off, we're live streaming on a Friday afternoon, and that will continue to be the case for the next 2 weeks in August. But I did want to give a little bit of a schedule update for you guys as the school year starts, or the fall starts. There's I'm going to be doing a different live stream time, going to try Thursday nights at 8 p.m. Central, starting on September 5th. So we'll see. It's not really something where, ideally I'd like put out a survey and be like, here's like 5 different times that I could do during the week. What works well for you guys, but it's tricky to find a time that fits in the jigsaw puzzle of my schedule that I can like consistently show up. I want to be here on a weekly basis for you guys. And so Thursday nights, 8 p.m. Central. It's a little bit on the late side, definitely for people who don't live in North American time zones. But it's always available on demand. You can watch it, and I want to have more sort of ways you can watch or enjoy maybe some of the content from the live streams, maybe not even live. So we'll see if no one can make it live, then it's a terrible time for everybody. I'll move it, but that's my next experiment is on September 5th. We'll be moving to a live stream at 8 p.m. Central Time. So I'll be talking about that more as it gets closer, but just a heads up to those of you who like to tune in live. That's kind of the next test, but next few weeks should be this same time, same place, 3 p.m. Central on Fridays. So I see some good conversation in the chat. We'll talk more about some of that in just a second. One other thing that, we talk about Apple and smart home tech, and the Apple side of things, it really kind of made me sad or upset. Just the whole thing going on with Patreon and Apple trying to take 30% from Patreon. It's been in the news this week. Patreon's basically saying that in November, if you subscribe to in the iOS app to a creator subscription, then it will be 30% more costs. 30% of that payment will be going to Apple every month. Because Apple takes 30% of App Store transactions, and they think that the membership on Patreon fits in that category of an App Store, what should be an App Store transaction. And there are definitely benefits Apple provides the platform, but I just think the amount of commissions they take and the variety of circumstances they take those commissions just doesn't make sense to me. One thing that I've always been playing with in my head is like, I wonder if there'd be a clearer cut line if Apple just did it on a framework by framework basis, because there are obviously things like ARKit and MapKit, or putting maps in your application, augmented reality, or even just, using some of the camera features where you're building your business on top of lots of Apple software and adding features that you couldn't add potentially if you didn't have the expertise of these Apple engineers building these frameworks. And so, it seems like more of a realistic case for Apple to charge for its IP. And, maybe there could be something where if you're not a game and you don't link against a list of Apple's frameworks, then you wouldn't have to fall under as much in-app purchase fee stuff. So then sort of the larger tech companies of the world, the Spotifys, the Netflix, those companies could build up their own libraries of UI development and audio streaming and video streaming. And if they're putting in that work because they have the money and the time to do that, then they don't have to pay Apple anything for that. But if it's, or maybe they have to give Apple the option, they have to give people the option to pay with Apple, but they can also provide an alternative. I just think something like that could be more cut and dry than sort of like if you're a reader app or you're a small business or all this other stuff. But I get what John Gruber, I think, was arguing is like, what if creator subscriptions is some kind of a separate category? I mean, behind the scenes as well, like YouTube memberships, I think they've always just taken the 30% cut from YouTube membership. So if you pay for a YouTube membership, the Google or YouTube is taking 30% of that as a fee before it goes to the creator. That I think in part is Google protecting themselves against, in certain cases, they're going to have to pay that 30% to Apple. Of course, I think a lot of creators are going to probably just do if they are on Patreon, do 30% more is the cost of subscribing in iOS. And I mean, subscriptions in iOS are convenient. It's nice that you can go and see everything in one place. You can cancel right there really easily. So, I think that there's definitely some positives to that whole thing. And, I'm definitely someone who's benefited from all Apple's innovation on the iPhone and making apps and everything over the years and stuff. So I'm not here to like just complain about it, but yeah, that's my thoughts on Patreon and stuff. Good afternoon, Lincoln. Nice to see you here. Can't stay long, but wanted to pop in and say hi, Alex. Yes, thank you. Great. Always enjoy content. Thank you. Great to hear. And thank you, Lincoln. Love the videos. That's great to hear. So, I'm going to see if you guys have any questions in the chat or anything to talk about. I've probably some other topics we can jump to, but just don't want to ignore you guys if there are questions. I have the Mini K10 Plus, and it is so good for apartments. Very quiet. That's a really good point, Zane. They do advertise that it is more quiet than other vacuums. I've not tested, so I don't know that for sure, but that's good to hear from you that it is in fact quieter. And definitely a benefit there. Okay. You got rid of your interesting blog field saying they got rid of their 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi cameras and replaced them with Wi-Fi 6 compatible ones. That's interesting because usually the 2.4 gigahertz spectrum is the one that's the best spectrum for traveling longer distances. However, if you get a Wi-Fi 6 device, it's going to still have the option to go over 2.4. So it might, I don't know whether whether the new cameras are actually communicating at 6 gigahertz or 5 gigahertz, but they have more options. They have more, later Wi-Fi specs. So, but that's good to hear. That whatever it is inside of that Wi-Fi signal, that's more reliable. Another thing I wanted to mention on the Google stuff really quick. I'm going to pull this up. Is the Google TV? What is it called? It's not the Chromecast now. But they have a new, I love this idea of they have a button on the back of the box, the streaming box, where then it will make a sound on the remote. So you can find the remote in the couch cushions or whatever else. I think that makes so much sense. I know Apple has their whole Find My system and you can pull up the remote and Find My and stuff, but just having a speaker on the remote and being able to find it that way is just a lifesaver. Now, one other note also, I mean, obviously, like I'm not switching to Google. I'm here with Apple stuff, and I'm in continuing to use Apple TV. If you happen to be going on some kind of a trip where you're maybe renting a place, like a vacation home or whatever, we just did that last week, and I brought along an Apple TV, one of our Apple TVs, plugged it into the TV in the vacation home and use it there. And really nice way to just have all your apps, streaming services just logged in, set and ready to go. I had other Apple TVs and home hubs back here to run my smart home. So that wasn't a problem. And so if you're traveling still for the rest of the summer or the fall or something, and I don't know if I do it necessarily as much in a hotel where they sort of have their own systems and the Wi-Fi is a little different. But if you're in like sort of a vacation rental property, it can be really nice to have your own Apple TV there with everything. Just don't be like me and forget the remote. I had to order another one of these Siri remotes when I got home because I left it there. So that was my bad. Very convenient though to have an Apple TV on the road. If you I think I've said that before and other people have. It's not new. It's not a new idea, but just a reminder if you're thinking of going somewhere. Yeah, I think it's pretty cool how the EU has some third-party app stores. I know it comes with, it's sort of a double-edged sword. Ben Thompson on Techrees talked a lot about it and stuff, where there are some limitations where things like Apple Intelligence might not be able to come to the EU because of some of the gatekeeper regulations. But I'm not a lawyer and authority, and I think to say like what is a good or a bad idea there, but I think the outcome of the outcome of the regulations in the EU this year resulting in third-party app stores, I think is really cool, and having those that flexibility. And back to even Patreon, like AltStore has some ways I think to pay for apps and things through being a Patreon member of whatever. And I think that kind of concept is pretty cool, where you're not necessarily just paying for apps in the traditional ways that Apple has defined. There's room for more innovation in business models and like some cool apps that use the pasteboard in cool ways. So you can, have a clipboard manager in iOS. I think all that's great. And I think it's also pushed Apple to do things like allowing game emulators on the main app store, which I think is a great win. I'm not huge into that. So I've downloaded them and checked them out a little bit, but I'm not big into that as a hobby myself, but I think it's great that it's there. And greetings, Saul from Hilton Head. I love as a kid, I grew up in Virginia, and we used to road trip down to Hilton Head Island. It's a great place to hang out. So that's great to hear you're there. Enjoy. And hello from the Netherlands, Tackle View Channel. Great, thank you. Very cool. It's fun concept that all these people are able to watch from random corners of the earth, and not random, but just like all over the earth. It's like, it's so obvious and simple that like, of course we're all connected via the internet, but in another sense, when you realize just like how far away these places are from where you are, it's just like, it's pretty crazy that it all works. Quick question, because I'm new to all the Apple stuff. Is Nest going to be Matter now? Yes. Great question. So the Nest 4th generation thermostat, and I'm going to pull up the Nest Learning thermostat here on the Google Store, so you can see visually what I'm talking about. All right. Oh, whoops. Cancel. Okay. This was part of the duct tape and string. I wasn't really quite ready to screen share there. So the Nest Learning thermostat, that's the 4th generation one. This is the new one, and this supports Matter. So it ships on the 20th. So we'll see. I'm guessing, like a lot of Matter accessories, it comes with the Matter code. Of course, Apple Home's already set up for Matter. You just scan the Matter code, just like a HomeKit code, and you're set. And then, of course, you can add it to any other kind of system you want to. So that's the 4th generation Learning thermostat. Now, the Learning thermostat is like Nest's high-end thermostat, and the previous 3rd generation Nest Learning thermostat, which I guess technically you could probably still go to a store and buy it today. That one is not Matter compatible. I'm guessing they had some issues with like the temperature sensor, some other stuff with the hardware that just wouldn't quite let it work with Matter. And then the lower end, I mean, still, I think great, although I haven't tried it myself to be able to vouch for if they, how they perform. But the basic Nest thermostat has been Matter compatible already. So if you want to like go to the store today and buy a Nest thermostat that works with Matter, this one, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty confident this one works with Matter already. Let me just double check that. Here's a chart. Yep. Okay. So they're all, the basic Nest thermostat is Matter compatible. And then of course they have here the Nest Learning Thermostat 3rd generation, which I was mentioning earlier, that you could technically still buy today and maybe into the future. That one does not support Matter. But so the Nest thermostat for $130 that's already been for sale for a while, it doesn't have quite as many of the AI features as the other Nest thermostats, but that's one that you can use with Matter. It also doesn't have the ability for external temperature sensors, I think. Yes, works with Nest temperature sensor. No. So that's another real advantage, I think, especially if you have a single zone home. Ecobee and Nest offer these external temperature sensors, and so then you can change your thermostat to heat and cool the home based on other zones. Ecobee's a little bit more smart about it, I guess you could say, or not, but like Ecobee wants to do that for you. So Ecobee's sensors will just sort of watch via motion sensors inside of them, like where are there people in the home, and just heat and cool based on that. Nest, you can do that, but there's also ways you can specifically schedule, all right, and in the evenings, I wanted to specifically heat and cool the home based on this temperature sensor in the bedroom. And then during the day, I wanted to heat and cool the home based on this temperature sensor in the living room. And the thermostat itself is also a temperature sensor. So you can play around with the different settings there. And there probably is a way to do that in Ecobee. Can't remember off the top of my head like where that would be or stuff. It's been a while since I've like messed with our Ecobee thermostat settings, but that is currently what is cooling our house right now is an Ecobee thermostat. But I used Nest for years before that, and then Ecobee sponsored the channel, so I set up their stuff last year, and we'll be definitely checking out Nest as well. Try and give you guys perspective on both. So that is that connection. Yeah, this is a good point, Zane. Matter's kind of a rolling series of updates. It's kind of nice in a way if you think about it as like we get to see the future of what's coming, because standards get ratified. And from my understanding, Apple is there when the new Matter standards get certified. They're there as part of signing off on that, right? If Apple is really opposed to something getting in the Matter standard, I'm sure they could pull some strings and get it to be out of there. So it's not like this is taking Apple by surprise when Matter 1.4 comes out. But yeah, we're still getting Matter 1.2, 1.3 in, I think it's 1.3 is coming in this fall. But that's the one that includes vacuums and things like that. So I like this, but it's also annoying in another sense, right? Because you see the new features that are coming, but at the same time, there's not much you can do about it. Just kind of have to wait for Apple and other companies to build the products to support it. Oh, man. Melvin Estrado, good question. Melvin Estuardo, I'm sorry. The Wi-Fi 6 outdoor camera that works with Apple home security video. Unfortunately, I don't think there is one. The best best outdoor camera to do HomeKit secure video is the Eve Outdoor Cam. You can still get and now it's available. I mean, it's been available for a while in white and black. Here, I'll show. This is some quick duct tape and string holding all of this set up together. There we go. So the Eve Outdoor Cam is connected continuously to power, which is really nice. I don't know if it specifically supports Wi-Fi 6 standard or not, but I would consider it probably the most reliable, best HomeKit camera out there for supporting HomeKit secure video. There is the Logitech Circle View as well, which I didn't really get to this in a previous live stream, but Logitech CEO, who's 7 months into the job, said on an interview that like they don't really do stuff in the smart home anymore. And then, of course, the PR team at Logitech issued a statement basically correcting that interview and saying that they do plan to continue to support their smart home stuff like the Logitech Circle View doorbell and the Logitech Circle View camera. Of course, they're currently sold in Apple stores. I always like to keep tabs on like what is Apple picking to sell in their stores, and they were picking the Eve Outdoor Cam for a while. Maybe it's still there, but they also have been continuing to sell Logitech Circle View. I've just heard had myself personally, and I've heard so many people have issues with the Wi-Fi connection on those cameras that I can't really recommend them. Unfortunately, for the HomeKit secure video front, there aren't too many options that are battery operated. There's some old Eufy cameras that are still for sale that, I don't know, they're not terrible. I just don't think it's really great to buy something that's technology from like 2019 that's still being sold. You're just not, I don't know. So, and that's certainly not going to be Wi-Fi 6. Let's see, like, I can't remember if NetAtmo's another smart home company, if they have Wi-Fi 6 in their cameras. I'm just looking at the specs page here here, let me pull this up. All right, so this is the Eve one, and it is BGN. So this is not going to be Wi-Fi 6. And then NetAtmo has their weather station, of course, and their smart outdoor camera. Accept all the cookies for now. Yeah, and this one is BGN as well. I wouldn't be surprised if they're using the same whatever chip to connect to Wi-Fi between these two cameras. And I can't remember, does NetAtmo's been like hit or miss on their HomeKit secure video support. Some of their cameras support it, some don't. And I often lose track about which ones. They're a really cool company. It seems like they're based in France, I think. And I mean, their stuff looks so cool. Eve is based in Germany. So both some cool European smart home companies. But yeah, I don't really think there's a good option of a Wi-Fi 6 HomeKit secure video outdoor camera. I think you're either going to have to go with a HomeKit secure video outdoor camera, or you're going to have to go with something that's more, specific to Wi-Fi 6. I've got, let's see. A lot of good discussion here happening in the chat. Yeah, I mean, that's a good point too. Like, back to the EU App Store thing, like, Apple does provide another side of Apple's service is that they are, screening the apps in their store and stand by them. And that's definitely, there's definitely value there. So if you're concerned about, the app store, you don't have to use the alternate stores either. So I think it's a positive they're there, and for people who want to use them, but you're not forced to use alternate stores. It will be interesting if there are certain apps over time that are like big apps, let's say like a WhatsApp, for example. If you have to use an alternate store to get WhatsApp on your phone, that I think would be an interesting dynamic that wouldn't be ideal because, and they probably wouldn't do that because there'd be so many people who just want to use the main Apple App Store. So we'll see. And it's like, then at that point is like, is Apple still a gatekeeper? I don't know. It gets tricky there because then it's like, well, WhatsApp still has to do business with Apple, but in that respect, I don't know. It's many layers there of confusing details. Let's see. Oh, greetings from Ireland. Very cool. How do I convince my wife that the smart lights from Hue don't use much electricity when on standby? Oh, that's a good point. I mean, I haven't done any like energy profiling of smart home tech. It's always been something like I want to do, but I never get around to like making a video about it. I wouldn't be surprised if there are some good videos out there, like just profiling that. Hue might also publish some specs on like how much electricity they use in standby. I think the biggest thing is that Wi-Fi bulbs use more electricity than, especially if you're using Hue with Apple Home with a Hue bridge or Hue hub. That means it's running on Zigbee, and Zigbee is a much lower power frequency than Wi-Fi. So yes, you're still using some power to keep the bulb on, but it's very minimal. And I mean, that's as much as I can tell you from a scientific perspective, but because I haven't like done any like the tests and measurements of it, but I think the benefits outweigh the slight increase in electrical use. You can, let's say you're leaving on a vacation or something, you could always just flip off the light switch and then the bulb's not getting any power. And then, you're not using any electricity from that, assuming the switch is just a basic light switch. So yeah, I mean, but then at the same time, you're losing the smart features. Maybe you want to have some of your lights turn on in the evenings to make it look like you're home. So there are trade-offs there. But yeah, I would say because there's Zigbee, or if you don't use Zigbee, if you don't have a bridge, then you're using Bluetooth with Hue. Those are lower energy than Wi-Fi. And Thread, of course, is another standard that's lower energy than Wi-Fi. But Hue does not use Thread. But same idea there. They're things that are built for the smart home, built for these kind of passive connections between devices. We got some fellow iOS 18.1 users here. I haven't tried the nominating a home hub yet, but yeah, it's definitely something I'm excited about. I am just a little wary to upgrade all of my Apple. I have some of my Apple home hubs on iOS 18, but I'm reluctant to like completely switch my network over, just because also like, I mean, theoretically, it's a pretty minimal release this year in terms of like stuff that could break smart home tech. But I had some really bad experiences right when the initial betas dropped in June. And so I've just been a little bit wary this year about if I'm reviewing a product and trying to tell you guys if it's good or not, and then I face a bunch of bugs that it doesn't work. Well, is that the manufacturer's fault? And should I fault them and say, oh, don't buy this because it's terrible? or because it doesn't work for me, or I can't recommend this because it doesn't work for me, or you know, should I run the non-beta software and then be able to properly evaluate something based on what I think is more fair to the manufacturer? So it's a trade-off there. I've definitely been playing on both sides, but I haven't played with the Home Hub stuff yet. I will be making content on all that stuff coming up very soon. So yeah, I need to dive into that more. Had a busy week, haven't done that. What is the name of your floor lamp? I can't find the name in your prior videos. Yeah, so a lot of people ask about this, and I've had this floor lamp in various office setups. You can't actually see it right now, but here, if I change to this camera, I think this is the lamp you're talking about, which is that lamp in the corner. It's in a bunch of my videos. And that lamp is just a random lamp I bought on Amazon that is not made anymore, unfortunately. So that's why I don't have a link to it. I probably should put something in the description, like you can't buy this anymore. But I bought it, I want to say it was like 2019 or 2020. And so, yeah, it's some random merchant on Amazon that's not available anymore. And it's like there's some other lamps I've bought that also are not available anymore from other places, and I've used them, to show off different smart bulbs and smart switches and things like that. And yeah. Let's see. Oh, it's a good point, Wisp, on the I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. I'm sorry. I'm just taking my best guess, but used in the Nest 3rd gen does have dependencies on the cloud, and that's kind of just how Google's mode of operating, and they I imagine the 4th gen will be the same. So it is a downside. It will be interesting to see with Matter. Theoretically, you can set up a Matter device by just scanning doing no setup by Google in their app and just scanning the code and connecting it. I'm not sure how that will all work with Google, given how much they like to have you logged in their accounts. It might be that it's possible, but then you lose a bunch of the potential services there. But yeah, it's a trade-off that you have with Google being in the cloud for so much stuff, which in some ways can be, a lot of people look at that as a downside. And I agree that in general, it's better to have smart home tech working locally in your home. However, on the other side, it's like servers that are running in the cloud and your connection to the internet, or a device's connection in your home's connection outbound to the internet, is probably more likely to be working because your internet service provider is going to be maintaining the connection. Now, there were some outages recently in like this Illinois suburbs with some internet service providers yesterday and a little bit this morning. So, it's that like areas where I live, like the internet just went down because they messed some stuff up. So, but that's incredibly rare that kind of thing happens, at least in where I live. And the other side of it too is, of course, the services that are running in the cloud. Well, the cloud services are going to be up, and if they're not, it's a big deal for like engineers to jump on and fix. And that's not necessarily the case with your home network, right? You're not getting a P1 alert somewhere when you're out and like, oh, I need to rush home and fix my home network because it's down. And so I think that was why you saw a lot of early smart home tech rely on, especially when people's home networks weren't as robust as they are today, like the Wi-Fi routers weren't as advanced. Companies just relying on, well, at least we can just get to the cloud and we can get out, through the internet connection. And even, let's say back in 2016, 2017, a lot of people had broadband internet, which was pretty fast. So, yeah, I think that's why, Google's always been, of course, a very much a cloud first company and in a lot of different ways. And that's great. But, it comes with trade-offs. And balances, and that's why like myself and maybe some of you guys prefer Apple and especially their approach to smart home tech. But yeah, I think that's kind of why a lot of these companies did that, is because maybe you messed up a setting in your router or something like that, and then all of a sudden your temperature sensor can't see something else in your network like the Matter controller, but it can get to the cloud still. So yeah, just something to consider there. Yeah, it does. It does. The Natmo and Eve outdoor cams look very similar. Happy Friday, Edgar's Home Tech. Nice to see you here. Another great. Let's see, another great channel. Oh, it's not Wi-Fi 6 though. I have. Yeah. Didn't Atmo get acquired, I think, a number of years ago? Yeah. Netatmo is part of Legrand now. So potentially that's part of the reason. I know, acquisitions are always, who knows, sometimes they work out well, sometimes they don't. So maybe that plays into some of their lack of product development, or maybe they have really cool stuff they just aren't ready to show us yet. Let's see. A lot of great discussion in the chat, just catching up on that. Oh, that's a really good point, Tyler. So there are like enclosures, and I'm sure you could 3D print them even as well to like more custom fit a particular camera model, but there are plenty of ways to make an enclosure for an indoor camera outdoors. I've not tried this. Love to hear if someone else in the chat has done this. My concern there, that's a tricky side, is like running the power to it. Just because it can be easy to make a watertight box, or that fits everything, but then to also be able to get the power into that box in a way that's, and that having that cable run to it in a way that fits. I think the easiest way would probably be some high rated or outdoor rated Ethernet cable. That's usually pretty easy to come by, and then you could do PoE to USB-C or whatever inside of the box, and then that would be fine. And hopefully you wouldn't have too many heat issues there. That would be the other thing too, is like a lot of these cameras, I mean, they don't get really hot, but like if they're in a maybe airtight, or maybe not completely airtight, but like an enclosed box, it might be not ideal operating temperatures for them. So that's another thing to consider too. And that's going to vary camera to camera model. But definitely a cool idea. I like that. The other side of it too is, some of these do support Wi-Fi 6. I think some of the, like the newest, or the TP-Link C, I'm trying to remember. I can't remember off the top of my head which ones support Wi-Fi 6, but I don't know. It's an interesting idea. I'm just struggling to see. Oh yeah, Revokin's responding to me about the App Store. Yeah, Fortnite's now on that down there, but you don't have to play Fortnite as much as it might seem like you need to. I mean, it seems like a fun game. I given that I do this channel and everything else, I just don't have time to play Fortnite, but it does look very fun. So I can see how maybe if you're into that, I feel like you kind of have to. Can you use HomeKit to your video through Scrypted? Yes. I don't do this right now. I have it on my list of things I'd like to try soon. Shane Watley, I know, does some cameras through Scrypted. I think he does his Railink cameras through Scrypted. It's definitely a well-known thing. And if you are not familiar with what we are just talking about, let me pull up the website of, this is kind of like a Homebridge or Home Assistant type deal where you can, stream to anything. We've talked about it a little bit on the live stream before, you basically run this on various hardware that can run a Docker container. If you're familiar with that, it's sort of like a virtual machine container that's used a lot in like cloud services and deploying a server. But you can run it in your home on a Raspberry Pi or a Synology or a Mac even, and then you can run that as just like a little computer in your home that does this stuff. One of the things I just keep in mind though, with some of this stuff that deals with video, whether it's trying to do Homebridge or Homebridge with some of their camera integrations or Scrypted, I'd probably opt for Scrypted in that case, or also maybe some some other options out there. But like you're going to need some halfway decent graphics power in your camera, in your camera conversion hardware there. It's not doing a lot of things to change the video, but it's still potentially converting video feed from one format to another, or like maybe making something that was 4K into 1080p or something like that could use some graphics power. So it can't just be like a very old Raspberry Pi that just you have lying around. And I imagine they have recommended system requirements here somewhere. Yeah, that just what I'd say there. Let's see. I'm going to go back to the chat and see if there's anything else. Yes, this is a perennial question, Tika. I have a Homey Pro. I have thought about making a video on it, but I haven't used it enough. Like, as I will probably talk about in some upcoming videos, like I just way prefer running more simple automations through Apple Home than running my automations in Homey or Homebridge or Homey or Home Assistant or anything else. Like there are some valid reasons to use those platforms, but I just think that for me, I'd rather keep things sort of like the busy, smart, like rather than like my goal about this channel is to make smart home tech accessible for people who don't have a lot of time to like really geek out on all the details. Like what is the easy mode option for the smart home? And I think some of the Apple Home automations are much closer to that. That said, I mean, Homey is way more elegant of a UI than the Home Assistant UI is right now. Homey did just get acquired by LG a couple of weeks ago. I was watching Shane's live stream. I think it's that news kind of had just happened. So yes, and good to hear that HomeKit Gear Video does have a, of course, a scripted plugin as they talked about on there. It's good to hear it works well for you. But yeah, I haven't tried Homey. Maybe I will soon. Back to that. Oh, interesting. Okay. Would you recommend buying? Oh, yes. An iPad to mount on the wall for HomeKit access. No, basically. I just don't think it's worth the trouble. I think it kind of wastes an iPad in a way. Now, there are plenty of smart home tech products that are over, let's say, $300. And you can get an iPad for, especially a, entry-level iPad or maybe one on the used market. Apple's refurb stores, maybe a good place to look as well. You can get one for $300. So we're not talking about a lot of money, but I just think that in my experience, you have to do so many things to iOS to get it to agree with always being on and plugged in with the dashboard up. And, you can build out some really cool dashboards. I know Shane Watley has been really into that and done a lot with his home dashboard. I played with Brilliant as well. They were a previous company that tried this kind of a thing. And I mean, building their own little screen and went out of business. And yeah, I don't know. what to tell you other than just like, I don't think it's a good idea, but knock yourself out, go for it if you want to. There are probably plenty of other people in the chat who've done that. But I would rather see more something that has better first party support from Apple, especially even just around take away like the smart home display concept, just like in iPadOS, like some kind of a family mode where you can have the iPad sort of be unlocked with certain apps visible. And yes, there are certain ways you can configure iOS in a way that's sort of like that, but Apple really wants you to have a passcode on the iPad for, things like iCloud Keychain and other stuff that also then are you use by HomeKit. So, I don't like a wall-mounted iPad, but I would love to see some more stuff along those lines with more support from Apple. Back to the internet service provider. Yeah, unfortunately, connection will be flaky for 20 to 30 minutes a week. Lovely. Yeah. I know it's generalizing a little bit, but I think that was kind of the concept of what people were saying, where you could have, I think what people were thinking when they did internet based smart home stuff in the beginning was you could have plenty of networks, local home networks that were misconfigured for any kind of local communication for one reason or another. That would just not let devices communicate. And so then, or make it unreliable. And that is then on the homeowner, or like the person who lives in the home and owns the router to fix. And that's not always going to happen as fast as the internet service provider fixing their stuff. But yeah, it's a trade-off, and I prefer by Lincoln. You're probably already gone by now. I prefer the trade-off of like having stuff run locally, but I just think there's a reason why people pick that. It's like, I think that's an interesting idea too, of like Ben Thompson at Stratechery talks about that, like sometimes it's easy to look at decisions that people in companies make and just think they were so dumb. Like, why did they do that? But usually they're really smart people, but it's just like interesting to try and understand, how did these really smart people arrive at this idea that maybe doesn't make as much sense? And I actually think in this case, for the time back in the day, the early versions of the Amazon Echo, I think it made more sense to put stuff online, have stuff communicate to the cloud first, but it was not ideal long-term. And I think that was, HomeKit made the right decision to try and push the industry into, being local. Yeah. Camera in a box will overheat. Yeah. James, good point. Back to can you put a sealed box with a camera inside of it? Because it's doing ventilation and thermal management of a camera in a box that is also meant to keep water out. It's a pretty hard problem to solve, but I think it's something. I wouldn't be surprised if you could figure something out that would functionally work. Maybe the ventilation is somewhere where the water's probably not going to come. You're not planning to chuck this into a lake. It just has to sit outside somewhere. But it's, I think, also going to be a little bit built for the camera, and also where you want to mount it. Less something where it's like, oh, you just follow these 10 easy steps and then you too can have an outdoor camera. Yeah, I mean, iPad mini is a nice way to mount a thing. I think, I've given my iPad mini to my children as not unrestricted, but like, it's like the iPad that's like ready to go for the kids to watch content or things when they need to be entertained. They don't get a lot of time in front of a screen, but it's a nice tool to have sometimes with small children. So that's where my iPad mini has gone. I don't know. I have tried wall mounted iPads, but I always end up taking them away from that job and repurposing the iPad for something else. There is one thing, if you are in the iPad wall mounted stuff. One idea that's come to mind for me that has made me think, oh man, would this be the thing that would makes the wall mounted iPad so much better and like actually works well? A little on the pricey side, but something that, you know, if you're in the wall mounted iPad game, it could be something to consider. I get Instagram ads for this company all the time. Kuxiu, I think is how you say their name, but Kuxiu. And they have these MagSafe mount chargers as more and more, or not MagSafe, is it whatever the smart connector is the Apple charger on the back of the iPad. So this works with an iPad Air because now you can get some of the older iPad Airs used for, you know, $500, which is more than like an iPad mini or an entry level iPad. But then what you have is something that's not fixed to your wall, in that you just have this dock and you can, let's say, put this on your side table, you dock the iPad, and then there is your smart home control. You pick the iPad off of that, and then you have an iPad that you can carry around and, you know, use around your home. And then you can dock it again, and then you have your smart home control back there. So an interesting idea that I've played around with, could I do something along these lines that would like make something that's sort of like the best of both worlds, where you have like a wall mounted iPad, and then you also have, you know, something that's more portable. But I just think that iOS still doesn't really work well in like a lot of those multi-user scenarios where either, you know, iOS has like with guided access and some of the enterprise controls and stuff, you can just like have an iPad be like a single app, right? And that app anybody can touch and use that app. But then when you want to go to something else on the iPad, you got to enter a passcode, you know. And so there's that kind of configuration for an iPad. But then there's just using it as a normal single user device where it has a passcode and some apps on it. Maybe you could have an iPad that's sort of like people you live with know the passcode for it, and then they can, you know, go ahead and change the passcode there, or enter the passcode or Face ID, you know. But there's limit number of faces you can recognize, or Touch ID as well with fingers. I think it's 5 for the fingers. So it's possible, but then you just start to run up to all different limits, and you're probably setting up a separate iCloud account for that iPad. And so, you know, I think it's just the single app mode for an iPad to me feels like I don't quite want to do it for me. But on the flip side, trying to do something that's like a multi-purpose device, that's where I really felt like iOS starts to fall down and doesn't really have all the features that we'd want in terms of like a way that you could just say anybody who picks up this iPad can access this handful of apps, and somehow restrict it in a way like guided access, but isn't just a single app on the screen. So I don't know. Maybe I'll figure out a way or hear about some things that like change my thoughts on that, and I'll make a video like that. But I don't own an iPad Air that I could use for that right now. So, but if you have all the money in the world, I thought that would be a cool setup. So. Yep. Oh, nice. Yeah. I mean, that's great, Lincoln. Like you guys who show up here in the chat live, I learned stuff from you, and I love the back and forth conversation of like a live stream like this. And it's part of why I want to continue it, because, there are plenty of times where this channel it's about maybe like things I've learned I'm sharing, but it's also like about my journey of like figuring out smart home tech and sharing what I've learned with you guys. And I learned stuff from, there's plenty of you who've tried different things or done different things that I've not done, or you're up on like the latest about something that I'm not. And so I love hearing from a lot of you guys who show up, because you know so much about some of this stuff. So it's always nice. Oh, hey, speaking of someone who knows a lot about smart home tech, Eric, Modern Day Tech. Yes, and you've had Brilliance and iPads and other wall-mounted interfaces. Also, great YouTube channel. For years, barely used them, but that's another good point. Like, I don't know if my usage of them was outweighing. That's a very good way to put it. It's like the value I was getting from having them on the wall, yes, it was nice occasionally, but it's like it wasn't outweighing the cost of like I have this really cool piece of technology mounted on my wall that could be used for so many other things. You know, the other thing with that too is like, but on the flip side, I know like I've worked in app development in various jobs over the years, like in some enterprise scenarios of like big companies buying a bunch of iPads and using them. You know, you've probably gone to a coffee shop and you've seen like, you know, there's an iPad as like a point of sale or whatever. Like iPads get used in so many different places like this, like a wall mounted scenario. You know, even like a lot of the companies, if you go buy a wall mount for an iPad, a lot of those companies, they're like marketing for wall mounting an iPad is put it outside of a conference room where you can see like the schedule for the conference room and who's booked the conference room. Maybe that's kind of evolved in sort of this new era of working, but it's still like, you know, I think a lot of those ideas are interesting because like my wife and I were staying at a hotel earlier this summer, and the touch screen on the elevators was some kind of custom touchscreen. It was just a terrible touchscreen. Like it was really slow to respond compared to an iPad or an iPhone. And people are used to using their iPhones and Android phones that are fast these days. And so, and it's hard to make those good screens. So to be able to spend the cost of an iPad to put a really good touchscreen somewhere is often outweighs the costs of like doing something else. So it's not uncommon to see iPads used in creative ways like that. But yeah, I just think for me, for my home, not something. I get way more use out of physical buttons on the wall. And I think a lot of people understand those. Like here I have a button. This is a flick button, but I've used all kinds of different buttons. So yeah. Anyways, I'm sorry, I'm going to close down this chat. We've been going about an hour. I've rather spend time, effort, and better automations, and thus no need for an interface. That's an interesting point too. I think the automations can get a little bit complex, especially when you get into presence and motion, all that stuff. But that is nice, a nice side of it too, of just you open the door or you walk in a room and it just turns on, lights turn on, whatever. So a truly automated home. Or at least hitting a button that is somewhat smart about when you're hitting it and things like that, or what the state of your home is when you touch the button. So yeah, with that, I think we're going to be done for today. It's been great talking with you guys. I've had a long week, so I'm definitely going to chill out after this. I do not have a video. I give it like a 30% chance that I have a video out on Sunday. I might film. I have some ideas of some quick stuff I want to film. I'd love to get it out there, but I've been pretty spent this week after a long week in a lot of different ways. So I don't know. We'll see. But definitely have some cool content coming for you guys next week that I'm excited about. So stay tuned on the channel. There's always going to be new stuff coming. So yeah, thanks so much and have a good weekend. Bye.